I don't have a history of sustainability. I've actually been in a lot of different areas in my career, between tech and media being the most pronounced. Ed tech was my last gig for 5 years, and the waste issue just became very apparent to me as a consumer. And I believe that skills are transferable, and that after decades of building businesses and doing sales and marketing and business development and strategy, et cetera, that I could take those same skills and apply it to sustainability. I also really firmly believe that you hire the best people with the deepest knowledge, and that they are smarter than me and can supplement what I don't know. So I don't think it's important that I didn't have sustainability background, because over the last couple of years, I've learned a great deal, but I've also got great talent on the team to work with and to teach me.
Well, boy, I mean, you sound like a wise leader. So that bodes well for everybody who's a part of the Redish family. Let's back up just a little bit. So tell us exactly, what does Redish do? Where are you today? And maybe a little bit about where you're going.
Sure. I love to talk about that. What Redish does is it replaces single-use packaging in institutional cafeterias, corporate cafeterias, school cafeterias, hospital cafeterias, et cetera. Any place where there are lots of people eating. And unfortunately, they're still eating out of single-use containers. Doesn't quite matter whether it's plastic or compostable or stainless steel. All of the carbon emissions and water is in the actual manufacture of the container. So regardless of the material, if that container can only be used once, then it is contributing significantly to carbon emissions, water usage,
even if bamboo is better than styrofoam,
it doesn't matter.
It
doesn't matter.
Good, and it's wrapped in plastic when you get it anyway.
And that is also egregious, but that is actually not the issue. The issue is, if it's only being used once, it is delivering emissions that we can't live with as a country, as a world, really. There was a statistic that Upstream put out very recently that in this country alone, we use over 1 trillion single-use food packaging units. I can't even fathom what 1 trillion looks like.
Absolutely makes my stomach hurt.
The equivalent in 10 million tons of waste. 10 million tons. So I don't know where all your listeners live, but in New York, we're running out of landfill, and that's happening in a lot of urban areas. In New York, we're trucking our waste 6 hours north. How can that be good for the environment? So there's a reason why the EPA puts reuse at the top of the pyramid. It so beats single use of any material. And so what we're trying to do is really kind of create the circular economy by going into institutional settings where there's essentially a top-down approach. A company says, we're not using single use anymore. We're going to use reusable, i.e. we're redishing from now on. A school introduces it at an elementary level. And guess what? All of these people are now invigorated and educated into what the circular economy is and what it can mean for climate change and for the world that we live in, which is quite substantial. So we start in that setting and then hope that it kind of trickles down in as a habit with the people that are using it. So essentially, we are replacing single use with reusable, but more importantly, we're providing the service to make it reusable. There's a lot of conversation around reusables, but fundamentally, if you don't have the back-end infrastructure to track it, to wash it, to sanitize it, and to repackage it at scale, it doesn't matter. So that's what we built at Redish. We have a state-of-the-art facility that we've spent 2 years building. It has custom machinery. It has software that we've developed to manage reuse. And most importantly, all the operational processes for us to essentially deliver reuse at scale. And our dream is that not only does all of New York adopt Redish, but that ultimately over the next 5 years, we can find and replicate Redish across 20, 25 markets in the US.
That is such a tremendously inspiring vision. Not the least of which is the fact that it's a wedge, it's a conversation starter. It's a way for all of us to sort of stop and think, how else can I incorporate this circular economy into my life? And that's magnificent. So you're in New York now, in, you said, schools and different corporations. Tell me
Correct.
a
Yep.
little bit more about, like, who needs Redish and how do they get going? How do they get started?
Everybody needs Redish. But we really focus on institutions that have at least 500 people eating every day and that have sustainability initiatives. And this is just another one that allows them to show their students or their employees or their PTA or whoever they're trying to discuss sustainability with, that essentially they're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And we really focus on any kind of institution where there are lots of people, over 500 people eating. But we can go up to 10,000. I mean, we have no limits in terms of the kinds of institutions we can service.
So everybody who's listening to this today, in concept, we're all engaging with someone that could potentially use Redish. And so all of us can be part of really getting the word out there and making sure that we move this forward.
Julie, you really hit on something that's really important to me. And that is that we need to bring the whole concept into our everyday lives. And it's very hard to change behavior. I mean, we're all accustomed to doing things in a certain way. We're accustomed to consuming and throwing away. And we see what's going on with climate change. I mean, it's impacting everybody. I read a statistic recently that said 40% of Americans had experienced some kind of climate change disaster last year. Hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides. This is not a tomorrow event any longer. This is today. And we need to do something about it. And we're just doing our best to contribute.
So if I'm working in a major corporation, and let's just say it's in New York, because that, of course, you're already ready you're up and running in New York. What would I do? Would I go to the head of HR? Who would I go to? The head of operations? Would I write a note to the CEO? What would I do?
Well, a couple of things. Most of these companies have heads of sustainability now. So that's the person you would target, because that's the person who would understand the benefits of reuse. Secondarily, you'd go to the head of operations, because they're usually the group that oversees the dining facilities. But if you're brave enough to write a note to the CEO, we have found that the most successful implementations of the Redish program are the ones that have the backing of leadership, because it's important to them. They convey how it's important, and the employee takes notice.
All right. Well, everybody who's listening to this call is brave and is ready to get into action. We're all aligned on our values and what our hope is for the country. And really, truly just want to say thank you for sticking your neck out and being a leader in this space. Your passion is such an inspiration, and I feel it in my bones, and you make me want to be better myself in all those ways you just talked about. Let's talk a little bit about, you, like, how did you actually, though, yet I hear your passion, your commitment to the environment, but how did you scaffold to get to this point? Like, how did your past experiences really inform how you're working on Redish?
So I think, I've been very fortunate to be part of a lot of entrepreneurial ventures. As you mentioned up front, some of those were new businesses within larger companies. And I really started on this entrepreneurial journey very early in my life. My second job when I was 23 years old was an opportunity to start a business within a larger company. Now, the reason they chose me was because I was really cheap. and so there wasn't a whole lot of downside in, selecting me for the role. But it was a great challenge, and it really got all my juices going. And it really showed me that I'm really an entrepreneur, and it's what I enjoy most. It's where I'm most productive. In some ways, I'm a generalist, which is what entrepreneurs are, because we have to do everything. I like the multitasking. I like the challenges. I like the putting the puzzle together, which a lot of corporate jobs unfortunately don't allow you to do. So, I think I got to Redish just because I've done a lot of other startup ventures and built them quite significantly. They weren't all successful, Julie, as we talked about earlier. Some were way too early. Some were just wrong, just weren't the right venture at the right time. But they've all informed my coming to this point.